I've already gone in and drawn in a 1/2 inch stitch line on all 4 sides of both pockets. So what we're gonna do on the first step is we're gonna look at the pocket piece, and you want it laying horizontally, and on one of those lines, the 1/2 inch lines, you're just gonna stitch straight across, one of them going horizontally. So I'm gonna look at this as the top, and I'm gonna stitch right on that blue line right there. As you can see, there's just a stitch put in all the way across the top, and then you'll repeat that same step on the other pocket piece. So just along one horizontal edge, stitch right across there. So now we've got both pieces with a stitch along the top edge. All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna do a double turned hem along the edge that we have put in the stitch line, and the stitch line is just there as a marker for you so that you know exactly how far to fold over your fabric. So we're gonna fold over the fabric where that stitch line is gonna run across the top. So because I drew that line in at a 1/2 inch, really all I'm doing here is folding the fabric over a 1/2 inch, but instead of using a seam gauge to measure it, I've marked it with that stitch. So I'm just gonna fold that over a 1/2 inch. As you're doing this, just make sure that the stitch runs across the top, across the crease that you're pressing in. And it's a double turned hem. So what that means is I am going to be folding in that same side a second time. So I'm gonna fold this side over. Even with that, and now that stitch line is across the bottom here. So it is basically a 1/2 inch folded over, pressed, 1/2 inch folded over and pressed again. And then you can either pin or clip to hold it in place. So I'll just put a few of these clips in across the top just to hold it down so it doesn't move between now and the time that you are ready to sew. And you'll repeat that exact same process on the other pocket that you've already done the stitch line on. So repeat that same step. All right, so for this part, you're going to take that edge that you've just folded over, and so here is the crease. Right down here, you have that stitch line, and the side with the stitch line is the side I'm actually gonna be sewing on. So what I wanna do is I wanna put my fabric under the presser foot. I'm gonna lower the presser foot so that the edge of the fabric, this fold right here, lines up with the right edge of the foot. And then I just need to stitch all the way across. And so all I'm looking at this time, earlier when you were sewing, you kept your needle in that blue line. This time, what I need to do is just always look right here on the right side of the foot and keep it straight. You'll pull your clips out before you get to them. The end, and then you'll repeat the same process on your other pocket. If you're making this project in the sewing camp, you will want a student helper or the teacher to assist you with this part. Basically, what you are going to have is a mark from the edge of your fabric that's 6 inches in on each side, and that comes down from the top edge 9 inches. So if you're at home making this bag on your own, that's what you need to do. Measure down 9 inches and in from the edge 6 inches on both sides. And this just gives you a guideline of where to place your handles. So I'm going to lay the handle centered on top of that mark. So where that line is, I'm going to just center my handle right there and pin it in place. And you want to make sure that when you lay your handle down that it doesn't twist when you go to put the other end down on the other side. So we just have our handle laying up, and then we bring it around. See how the top is laying flat right there? Okay, so we just don't want it to be twisted. flat. And then the other handle goes on next to it. And we pin that down. All right, and so then you're gonna repeat the exact same process on the other half of the bag. So just again, make sure that this handle isn't twisting and that they're both pinned down 6 inches in, and the bottom should start 9 inches from the top. And this is gonna get covered up later with your pocket, so you won't see this unfinished edge of the strap or the handle. It will be hidden underneath the pocket part. So we're gonna attach the handles, but it's not going to be completely finished during this step. So what you're gonna do is you're going to have your presser foot up. You'll slide the bag and the handle underneath the presser foot. And I'm gonna turn, let's see here. I turned my machine to a 2. I'm gonna line this little groove in the foot up right here, and it's the clear plastic piece. I'm gonna line that up with the edge of my handle. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually start at one of the stripes up here. So I'm not starting clear at the top. I wanna leave the handle at the top free. It needs to be able to fold down later on a step later on when we're attaching the bag. So right now all I have is the needle lined up on that first stripe, okay? So I'm going to leave the edge of my handle right here. It's gonna be in line with the clear plastic edge. If you have any questions in class about where to line it up, let me know. And if you're doing this at home, it's just 1/8 of an inch or a top stitch is what you're doing right there. So I'm gonna stitch down to the end of the handle. When I get to the bottom of it, I'm just gonna leave my needle down right here. So it's down in the handle. I'm gonna lift up the presser foot and turn. This is called a pivot. So I'm gonna pivot, lower the presser foot, and I'm gonna stitch straight across. And then I'm going to stop right there, about 1/8 of an inch until I get to the edge. Leave the needle down, raise the foot, and pivot again. And now I'm just gonna stitch all the way back up the handle, just like I did on the other side. And I'm gonna stop when I get to that very top stripe. So I'm gonna stop it right about here, and I'm gonna reverse a couple stitches to lock it in. And then I can take out all the pins on that side, okay? Then I'll just repeat that same process on the other handle on this side, and then the whole other bag piece. So I'll be doing that same step 4 times. All right, so you should have your handle attached from about, 1.5 inches down from the top, down, across, and back up. And you've done that on both sides and then on both front and back of the bag. So make sure that you've done that before you get to this step. Now we have the pocket piece already ready. And so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna attach the pocket just in 2 places. And this is gonna give us a pocket that'll be on the side of your bag, a pocket that will be, whether this is front or back, but right in the middle, and then another one on the side. And those are really great because if you're taking this to the beach, you can put your sunglasses down in there, you can put your cell phone, a book, whatever little things you have, maybe your sunscreen. And so they'll just slide down into each of these pockets, okay? So what we've already done in class is we have drawn a line going right down the middle of, that's where that strap is. So that's where your line will go, that's a stitch line right there. Okay, so I'm just gonna put a few pins in to hold this pocket in place. And another thing that you wanna do is you wanna make sure that your pocket's on the edge of the fabric. So it's lined up across the edges and straight across the bottom before you put those pins in there, okay? So I'm just gonna put a few pins here just to hold the pocket in place. And then you'll repeat that on your other pocket piece. And really all we're doing is we're just gonna start here and stitch straight down that line, right here, and straight down that line. All right, so we have the handle, or the pocket pinned on, sorry. I'm gonna actually start at the bottom. And so for this one, I'm going to just put my needle in that blue line that's drawn in for you. If you're not in class and making this, that blue line is just 6 inches from the edge. When I get to the pin, I'm going to pull it out. I don't want to stitch over them. So I'm just going to sew right on that blue line the whole way up. And then when I get to the top of the pocket, I'm going to get right to the edge of the pocket. Okay, right there. And then I'm going to hit the reverse button a few times. And then sew back to the edge of the pocket. And reverse again. A few stitches. So we're just going to basically go back and forth 2 or 3 times, and because that's going to take the weight of the bag, and so you just want to reinforce that little spot right there. Okay, and then I'm going to get right back up to the top. This time I'm going to raise my needle and then I'll be done. So I've just back stitched right here, and then I'm going to repeat the same process on the other side of the pocket. So start at the bottom, put my needle in line with that blue line that's drawn in for you. Lower the presser foot and then stitch all the way up. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so our next step, this is attaching the front and back pieces, and you're going to want to do this right sides together. So I have my bag front or back, either way, laying right side up on the table. And I know it's right side up because this is the side where my pocket's going to be. My handle's on top here. And so then I'm going to take my other piece that is identical. So right now these 2 pieces are the same. I'm going to lay it right sides together on top of it. And I'm just trying to line up across the bottom and over on the sides. You want to make sure that those pocket pieces are out flat. Okay. You want to feel it, make sure it's nice and smooth, and that's what we need to do right there. So you have your 2 pieces laying together, right sides together, and now you're going to clip or pin on the side, bottom, and along the other side. You do not need to clip across the top. We're going to sew it later. So right now all we need to do are the sides and the bottom. When you're pinning, you want to put your pins in perpendicular to the edge, so they go all the way through all the layers and back up through all the layers. And this is going to help you later. It's going to help keep your pieces all together while you sew them. And it makes it easy for you to pull the pins out as you sew along the edge. Okay, so we'll pin all the way around those 3 sides. And then you'll be sewing on the stitch line. So you have that stitch line that was drawn in for you right there. You're going to sew all the way down this side, all the way across this side, and all the way up that side. All right, so now we're gonna sew just straight on that line. We're gonna start right up here on this blue line. I'm just gonna put my needle right down on the blue line and keep it lined up with that the whole time. I'm gonna back stitch when I start. As you get to a pin, you're gonna pull it out ahead of time and put it right in your pin cushion. And then just keep stitching. Stop before you get to your pin cushion. Okay. All right, I'm gonna go all the way to the end, reverse, and then I'm going to clip my thread, and I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to start down on the bottom now. So I'm going to start right here on the blue line again, and just stitch all the way across. By making sure that I'm on that blue line, it's far enough in from the edge that even if things aren't lined up exactly perfectly, I should catch all of the layers. Because right now I have the back and front pieces and 2 pockets, and I have to catch all of that in order to close the back up. So I'm going to finish this other side, reverse, and then I'm gonna start from the bottom. Same exact process all the way up this side. So we're done with the outside of the bag now. All right, so here is what we have so far. We have our whole outer part of the bag finished. So you'll want to make sure that you've taken scissors and trimmed off any extra threads. Just kind of clean it up. If you had threads here, anywhere around there, just take your shears and trim it all up, get it nice and clean. And then if you want to see what it all looks like, you can open up the bag just to give it a peek and see what it's going to look like. So this is what the outside of the bag will look like when you're finished. And we do have a couple more steps to do to complete it, but we'll take care of that here in just a few minutes. All right, so we are going to work on the inside or the liner of the bag now. I have one of my 20-inch squares laid out here. I've got my stripes going horizontal. I am using the same fabric for my inside that I did for the outside, but if you wanted to, the next time you make one of these bags, if you want to have a totally different fabric on the inside, you could do that, where it would be maybe a little pop of color or something. The other thing that you could do on the inside is make it just like you do the outside, where you have that pocket piece going across the bottom. You would not do the handles, but you would add the pocket pieces. And then when you're finished with the bag, you would have a totally reversible bag that has pockets both on the inside and outside. So we're not doing that today, but that is an option for you for the future. So I'm gonna lay, this one is right side up. So I'm gonna lay this one right side down. Have these right sides together. Okay. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to pin along the sides and the bottom, and that is the exact same process that I just did for the outside of the bag. So the only thing different is it's less fabric because I'm just doing the 2 layers since I don't have a pocket. Okay, so pin down the side, across the bottom and the other side, and then go in and sew on the line just like we did before. All right, I have my 2 pieces laying side by side here. So the main part of the bag, that's going to be the outside, and then the liner. I'm just trimming off some of the extra threads, and this really unravels a lot, but I'm just going to trim a few of those off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the liner piece and I'm going to turn it right side out. Poke out the corners there at the bottom. Okay, so there's my liner piece. So now my bag piece, the outer part, is still wrong side out. That's what I want to keep it. I want to keep it wrong side out. I am going to tuck those handles down into the pocket, down inside there. And then I'm going to take the liner piece, I'm going to open up the bag. I'm going to tuck the liner inside the bag part. Okay, so it's down in there. What I need to do now is I need to line up the raw edge across the top and the sides. So I'm going to open up that liner piece. I'm going to match up the side seams. And I'm going to put a pin in there. And then I'm going to put a pin So everything's lined up across here, across the top raw edge. Put another pin and do that every few inches. Okay, and now I get to the other side. I should be able to line up my side seams again. Pin right there. Put another pin. Now on the front half, I need to leave an opening so that I can flip the bag inside out later and get everything with the right side showing. So right in the middle here, between the two handles, I'm gonna put 2 pins side by side. 2 pins side by side is a reminder for you that that's where you're gonna start sewing and where you're gonna stop sewing. And so you won't sew between the 2 sets of pins. You'll leave that open, and that's where we'll be able to flip the bag right side out. I could also put 1 more pin in right here and another one right over here. So it should be open. When we're looking at it right now, I should see all wrong sides because I have right sides together on the inside. All right, so easiest way to do this part is to remove the free arm from the machine. So I'm going to grab a hold of it underneath here and just pull off to the side. And you'll just sit that off to the side for now. And what that does is it allows your fabric to slide underneath this part. So I'm gonna find those double sets of pins right here. And that is where I'm gonna start sewing. So I'm gonna use the edge of my presser foot as a guide. Earlier there was a step in the project where you just lined everything up with the edge of the foot, and that's what we're gonna do now. So I'm gonna take those pins out, but this is my starting position. I'm going to stitch forward a few stitches in reverse, and then I'm gonna just stitch all the way around the top. I'll pull out the pins as I get to them, put them in my pin cushion. And it's wrapped around that arm, so it allows you to sew something that's circular pretty easily. Oops, should not have sewn over that pin. See, as I get to it, I'm just gonna kind of rotate the bag around. All right, so I'm getting close to those 2 pins. When I get to those, I am going to reverse, and I'm done sewing. So I'm just gonna hit reverse, and I'm finished with that step. So I'm gonna show you what to do next. Okay, so you left this opening right here. Hopefully you've backstitched really well where you started and stopped. You're just gonna reach inside that opening and just start pulling. So you're gonna pull the bag through that opening. I'm not getting a hold of anything that's coming. Come on, there we go. So you just start pulling, pulling, and then turning the bag itself right side out through that opening. And be careful, you don't want to rip anything. So you may have to just do a little bit at a time in order to get it all through there. And there we go. So you have it all. Now I see all right sides of the fabric. Okay. Then what we have to do is we have to finish off the top of the bag. So I'm gonna take this liner part and just tuck it back down in the top. So I'm just kind of pushing it down in to the opening. Okay, so it's gonna look like that. All right, so we're pretty close to being finished. All right, so this last part, be very careful because the iron will melt this nylon strapping. It's not meant to be ironed or to touch the iron with it, so just be really careful. But what we are trying to do here is just iron that opening that you had. I'm just gonna go down to the end here. The opening that you flipped the whole bag inside out or right side out, you're gonna iron that with the edge turned in. So you had about a 1/2 inch seam allowance there. That's gonna be folded into the inside of the bag. And then we're gonna press across here. And then we'll be sewing that closed here in just a little bit. So that's going to be pressed down, and then we'll wanna pin it just to hold it in place. And then you also want to go all the way around the bag and make sure that the crease or the part where you stitched is running right across the top. And so what you can do is get it across the top and then just press it. And even though it's not an opening, it's already been sewn, I'm going to put a pin in there just so that it holds into the right spot when it's time to stitch it. I'm going to take my handle. Because see, I've pressed that up and it's in the right place. I'm gonna take my handle now and I'm gonna press or pin it down. Okay, because remember we had left it kind of loose at the top. So now I'm going to just put a pin in right here to hold it in place. And I'm gonna repeat that all the way around the opening. The very, very last step of the project, besides adding your vinyl lettering to the front, is to top stitch all the way around the top, and that's gonna close up the opening that you had pulled the bag through. So I'm gonna find that and start there first, or start near there. I'm actually gonna start right by this handle so that I can sew it down. So I'm gonna move my machine to a 2. It's gonna pop the needle over a little bit. Then when I use the edge of my foot, I'm only about 1/4 of an inch away from it, so it's not too wide. So I'm gonna start needle down, and I'm just gonna reverse a few stitches where I start. And stitch along here. Basically, we're doing the same thing we did a minute ago when we were attaching the 2 pieces, front and back. But now that's gonna hold that handle in place and that opening closed. You could do this with a different color thread for like a pop of color. You could also choose one of these decorative stitches on the machine to make it look just a little more detailed. I just want to do a straight stitch straight across. Back to where we started, so I'm going to go across that strap. things to completely finish your project is trim off all the loose threads. It's a pet peeve of mine and a lot of people who sew a lot to see things that are unfinished. So this bag has no raw edges. It means it's not going to come unraveled. Everything is finished or hidden on the inside. So we want to really take some time to trim off all loose threads and any strings you see, just to keep it really nice and neat. Now the next part that we're going to do in class, you may have already selected your design, but for this bag it's a really good chance right now to put a design right here on the pocket. So we have heat transfer vinyl. You can do your name or monogram, something like that, with a contrasting color right here in the middle, and then either iron it or heat press it down. Okay, so that is your finished beach bag. And like I said earlier, it is totally reversible. If you wanted to flip the inside out, it could be, and have your pockets on the inside. That actually might be a good idea if you're going somewhere public and you want to hide things inside of it, have the pockets on the inside rather than on the outside. So hope you enjoyed this project and learned a little bit about sewing along the way.